Welcome to All Home Care Matters, the show where we discuss all things home care, with discussions on important age-related matters and topics. Brought to you by Enriched Life Home Care Services, the #1 rated home care provider in Michigan by Top Rated Local.
Hello, and welcome back to All Home Care Matters. If this is your first time visiting us here at the show, we want to say thank you for taking time out to be with us today. We appreciate how valuable everyone's time is, and that's why we try and make each episode here at All Home Care Matters something that will hopefully matter to you. Today, we are honored and excited to welcome a remarkable person and friend, Dr. Jennifer Bute. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's our pleasure. So for our viewers and listeners who may not know you or know your story, you have a rather unique one in the fact that you were a practicing medical doctor in the UK, as well as also the person who diagnosed yourself with dementia.
Yes.
Let's start a little bit with what was it like when you first started noticing having any signs or symptoms of dementia? When did you first notice them, and kind of walk us through that progression to when you ultimately decided, I have dementia, I'm going to diagnose myself with dementia?
Well, initially, it was just forgetting passwords. I was the managing director of the largest practice in my city, and our level of security was different. And we changed the passwords every month for one layer, every 3 weeks for someone else, every 2 weeks for someone else, and every month, every week for the other. And I just couldn't keep up with it. And I thought, something's not right here. I'm not normally that stupid. So that was the first thing that went wrong. And then the second thing that went wrong was I got lost on the way to the surgery where I'd worked for 25 years. I couldn't believe it. I just hadn't a clue how to get there. And I had a map, but I didn't know where to look on the map. And I got late, and I was never late. They said, "What's the matter with you? Did you have an accident?" I said, "No, I got lost." And nobody believed me.
Right.
So I thought, okay. And then the third thing that happened that really finished me off was I was chairing an important meeting as I was the person in charge. And I had with me all the peripheral people from different authorities, the police, the health services, the social services, patients, all these kind of people meeting, about 22 people in the room. And I was chairing the meeting, which I had done many times before.
Right.
And I said to everyone, "How lovely to see you all. You're most welcome." Turned to the person on my left and I said, "Well, I don't know anybody in this room, so let's start with you." And she said, "Don't be so stupid, Jennifer." "Don't be so stupid. I've known you for 20 years. Well, I had no idea. So I quickly passed on to the next person. I said, "Well, I definitely don't know you." "Yes, you do. We arranged this meeting." And I thought, oh dear. I didn't know a single person in that room, even though they all knew who I was.
And some of them you known for 20 years.
Yes, I hadn't known all of them for 20 years.
Sure.
But they all knew who I was, and I had no idea who any of them were. But that's a continuing thing. And, we have to laugh about it. Can I tell you a little story now?
Please. Yes, please do.
My sister came to see me. She's older than me, so I've known her for rather a long time. And she came into the room to see me. And when she left, she, by mistake, left her phone behind. And I remember the incident because of the feelings it left behind. So I said, "Don't worry, I'll go and get it." So I came back in, picked up her phone, went outside the door, and I saw a strange lady standing outside the door.
Wow.
And I had no idea who she was. So I was about to walk past her with her phone when she said, "Are you going to give me that phone?" So I said, "No, I am not. It belongs to my sister, and I'm going to give it to my sister." "Oh, you stupid."
Did she think you were teasing her?
No. She knew I wasn't.
At that point,
She knew I wasn't teasing her. She knew that this happens to me. So she just said, "Oh, you stupid old thing." And in a way that I recognized the pattern, the mannerisms of her behavior. And I thought, oh dear.
Jennifer, and I also want to talk to you about your book, and I think it's a fascinating book, Dementia from the Inside, A Doctor's Personal Journey of Hope. And you're also a member of our good friends at All's Authors as well. And you're just doing tremendous advocacy work, but I think you're doing it with such joy in your heart and just such a positive, positivity that, it's hard not to want to listen to you, want to learn more. Where, there's other people that put such a dark, grim spin, and it is a dark disease. I'm not making light of dementia, but I think there's approaches that helps people learn better when it's something more in a positive manner rather than just the dark and grim. Kind of like, and I want to mention to our viewers and listeners, you were part of this large panel discussion we had a couple weeks ago on the ethics of dementia and social media. And that was kind of part of our conversation with the panel was, there's things being posted online that are very dark, they're horrific, that you would never want posted of yourself or one of your loved ones. But then there's the other posts that, they're showing the positive side, and I mean positivity, that it isn't all doom and gloom, and that you're, I think, a wonderful testimony to the fact that you can have a loved one or even yourself with this horrific disease, but still contribute and do things in a positive way to try to make the best of it. Is that a fair comparison?
Yes, but my problem is, having been a doctor, I do not think dementia is the worst thing that can happen to you.
Yeah.
But people with dementia get very angry with me if I say that.
Sure.
And to be fair, with anyone with their condition or their illness or whatever it is, their disease, to them, it is the worst thing that can happen. And I understand that. And as a doctor, I understood that. But standing outside this as a doctor, I know dementia is not the worst thing that can happen to you. I mean, I personally think motor neurone disease is far, far worse. But I also have a very positive attitude, because just as nowadays, if someone has a stroke, we expect there to be improvement. Whereas 20 years ago, we didn't.
Correct. Yeah.
But the damage is still there in the brain. But now there's active intervention, there's physiotherapy, occupational therapy, all these other things, because people do something actively. So I think, well, just as the damage is still there in the brain with a stroke, but the brain is able to learn new things. And I've seen that with people with road traffic accidents. I've seen people relearn how to walk and talk and write. I've seen it. So I know it's possible. So I thought, well, here's another challenge, another opportunity to make something good and encourage people. It is possible to relearn, maybe not as well. And obviously I'm not as good because I managed to get the times wrong, didn't I? But it doesn't matter. We can relearn a great deal. And a lot depends on our attitude as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a good friend who is a clinical psychiatrist, and he's fond of saying, you can be depressed and I can give you an antidepressant, but the pill doesn't work by itself. He's saying, the pill will help, but you can't just take the pill and still sit there and not do anything. They work together with the person's outlook, the person's involvement in conjunction with that, antidepressant pill. And I think that's a good analogy. It's kind of like making lemons out of lemonade.
But you see, it's such a wonderful opportunity for me, because living in the assisted living where I live now and where I was before, when I arrived, everyone was, so miserable. It was the end of the world and nothing worse. It was the worst thing could happen. And there was me, smiling and cheerful, and let's find a way to deal with this. Let's relearn if possible. We can't relearn everything. What can we do positively still? And people were amazed. So some of them then joined the bandwagon and started doing things in the groups that I used to run, the memory groups and things.
Okay.
And then other people saw the difference it made to them. So they then joined. So, you get it's catching. It's like a smile, isn't it?
Contagious.
People find we need purpose and value,
Yeah.
no matter what the state of our bodies, minds, or brains. We can have value and purpose. And everybody, I believe the person with dementia remains until the end. They just need to be found.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard of this period of lucidity. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Yes. Well, if people with dementia have this period of lucidity just before they die, doesn't that mean they were there all the time?
Right.
It didn't suddenly come from nowhere. It was there, but it often is released medically. I know that, not just with dementia, with other conditions as well. So if they're still there, we need to find them, surely. And so that's my kind of challenge and calling, to help find the person that is trapped inside this condition, which is why, of course, my book is, to try and help to explain that and help people to understand that there are ways. I mean, my father had dementia, and I'm ashamed. I didn't know then what I know now. I looked after him to the best of my ability.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I would have done it differently now.
Well, and I think it also is like you're giving people a glorious opportunity, which happens to be
We can choose whether we take it or not, can't we?
well, and I say glorious opportunity because you started the website and the organization, gloriousopportunity.org. Would you mind sharing with our viewers and listeners a little bit about the tremendous work you're doing on gloriousopportunity.org?
Well, it all started when I was asked to give a lecture, and people thought it was quite helpful and good. So they asked if they could record it. So my son said, well, I'm going to record it. So he recorded it, and he's set up my website in order to have a platform for that. And it's still there on the website. And then each year he would say, well, Mum, let's make a new video about a different subject. So until COVID started, every year we would do a new video, which is why there are about 20, aren't there now? I can't remember, on the website. And I have two websites, you probably know that. I have my main one, we have all these videos and resources, which, any people can download, leaflets and things. But the other one, which is on Facebook, still called Glorious Opportunity, is an opportunity to share what I've learned that week, because I'm still learning.
Yes.
And as I learn new things, as an opportunity to help other people also learn, isn't it? Yes. So we share what we can to inspire and help and encourage other people.
And imagine what it would be like if everybody took the approach that you took, or that you have taken. I mean, I think it would do so much to advance the lives of people living with dementia, but not only that, their loved ones, their caregivers, and their communities that they live in. I wanted to ask you, right now you're living in what you call a dementia supportive retirement village, but previously you lived in a dementia inclusive one for 11 years. What are the differences, and what made you move from the one that you were at for so many years to this new one you're at now?
Well, I was very happy initially. I mentioned that in my book where I was before, but I reached the stage when I needed more help than I was getting there.
Okay.
For example, I was running these groups and I was doing lots of things, and I was no longer able to still do it. And having had, in a sense, such a reputation and still being able to talk, people couldn't believe that I still wasn't able to do it. But I couldn't do it anymore. I was just not able to do it anymore. So the only way to cope with that was actually to move to a place where I had more help, more support, and people who knew nothing about what, though they have found out rather a lot, but they knew nothing about the groups that I was running. And of course, I'm not running anything here. So that load is taken off me, and I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Sure. That's wonderful. Can I ask you a few questions about when you were first diagnosed, or when you first diagnosed yourself? When you decided, okay, after that, that meeting you were holding, and you didn't recognize some of these people, and
any of them,
yes. And was it that moment there shortly after you said, I must have dementia?
Yeah, so my GP, we have family practitioners, he also realised that I had dementia because were on the same committees for many things for our National Health Service here in England. We were on the same committee, and he knew that I had dementia. So he was very supportive. So he sent me to a neurologist to get a diagnosis. But unfortunately, I was a very well-known and well-respected doctor in the city. And the consultant said, when my husband and I walked in, he said, "Oh, I gather you're worried you've got dementia. Well, I can tell you before you sit down that you haven't."
Wow. Okay.
So I felt humiliated. Didn't want to know why I thought I had dementia because I didn't know who people were. I had hallucinations and all that kind of thing. Didn't want to know. So I decided that I was not going to complain again.
Okay.
But it was only when things got worse, I had to. So I then got sent to my GP sent me to a different neurologist who did investigations, which the first one had not done. And he said, "Yes, there is something the matter with you, but you're a good doctor. We can't afford to lose you. I'm not prepared to tell you the diagnosis."
Wow.
And I thought, well, that's not safe. Just imagine standing up in court.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't possible, was it?
Right.
But I couldn't retire from where I was. I was, in charge. I had no reason to retire. And the other doctors wouldn't let me retire unless I had a diagnosis. So I asked to see a neuropsychology professor who spent 2 days doing tests on me. And she said, "My word, yes, there is something the matter with you. So we'll get someone who is qualified in early onset dementia."
How old were you at that time, Jennifer?
59.
Wow. Do you mind me asking how old you are now?
Working there, 77, I think.
So, okay. Now, once
But
you
it took 5 years to get a diagnosis. So it started when I was 59. And I think I retired then because I knew I wasn't safe.
Sure.
I couldn't stand up in court and, with a clear conscience. Well, I wouldn't have got anywhere. I would have been fried alive, wouldn't I? But it took 5 years to get a diagnosis.
Well, one of the questions I was going to ask you, and I was interested in learning about, and you've kind of summarized it, was, as a medical doctor, did you think knowing that you had dementia affected you any differently than had you just been a lay person or just one of your patients getting that diagnosis?
Well, I knew what the consequences could be, and my father had dementia. But to me, it's partly because of my faith, isn't it? Everything is a challenge and an opportunity, and to encourage and help other people in some way. So, I said, "Okay, Lord, this is my new challenge, my new opportunity." It wasn't one that I chose. I would have chosen, but okay, it's the one that you've given me or allowed me to get. So, okay, let's see what we can do with it.
I have the Bible app on my phone, and actually the verse of the day was, when you're going through trials and tribulations, it is not to test your faith, but rather to make your faith stronger.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And to have reason to encourage others.
Yes.
That nothing is wasted in God's economy, and everyone still has worth and value, even if they are, cracked in some way or got bits missing in some ways. And I'm sure you know that lovely analogy of kinsekuroi, the Japanese thing of, it's I think what they do in Japan, dishes that are broken, they repair them with gold and silver and platinum, things that are costly. And I often say to people, that's like an analogy for many people with dementia. They feel broken, that, life's all in pieces, but we can be glued together again, for me, with God's grace and mercy and love, but also other people's love and care poured into people's lives can also glue them together.
Yes.
And give them worth, and they can become more beautiful as people because of the love and care that's poured into their lives.
Well,
but it costs the people who look after them.
And I think it goes back to people having a better understanding of dementia. You're such a wonderful testimony to what you can do, even though you get a diagnosis. Your life does not end. And I think so many times people have this mentality that I can't do anything now. I'm just going to go away because I have dementia. I'm no longer of value. I don't have a purpose. I can't contribute. And here you've written books, and you have a wonderful children's cartoon about, the dragon and the child, and you have gloriousopportunity.org. When did you, after your diagnosis and, you stepped back from, practicing, when did you say, you know what, this is my new chapter and I want to start helping to raise awareness and educate people about dementia? When did Glorious Opportunity come about? Did the book come first or the website or?
No, the website. It was because I was at a meeting. In fact, it was a church meeting, and people said they didn't know at that stage that I had dementia. I was a bit quiet about it. And they said at this meeting, oh, there's no point visiting so-and-so, she won't remember because she's got dementia. Wow. And this person, this with dementia, her family are dreadful. They never come and see her. And I knew both things weren't true. The person always would know whether they'd been visited, even if they didn't remember who visited them. And the other lady couldn't remember that her family visited her, but I knew they visited her regularly. And I thought, well, they don't know, they don't understand. So I asked if I could give a talk. And they said, all right. So I gave a talk, and much to my surprise, about 50 people came. And they thought it was quite good. But mind you, I was used to talking and giving lectures. So they asked if I could do it again and record it. So my son said, no, I will record it and I'll put it on the website so anybody can be able to watch it if they want to. So that's how the website started. And then when I wrote the leaflets, because there was nothing to help me, I wrote the leaflets. I used to write health education leaflets. So I wrote all kinds of leaflets and so on. And then we started making these videos. So that's how it all started, by mistake almost.
Wow. And sometimes that's the best things come from those situations. Yeah. Are there any myths or stigmas that you may want to help to dispel for our viewers and listeners about dementia? There's a lot of misconceptions out there. What are some that you want people to know that might be watching or listening this, that just because you have dementia, it doesn't mean X, Y, or Z?
Well, it doesn't mean you have no worth and value. And I always like telling the story about, I've never forgotten it. I was called where I lived before by the staff to come and help with a lady with dementia who was kicking off. Dreadful phrase.
Yeah.
And I had never met this lady before. I didn't know what the matter was. And she was sitting in the middle of a group of other people, waving her arms around and shouting, and obviously very upset and distressed. And they were telling her, be quiet, how dare you make this noise, sit down. And so they'd called me to deal with the situation, apart from calling their doctor to give her an injection. I mean, so I walked in and I saw what was happening and I thought, this is awful. So I told everybody to go away. And I knelt down on the floor in front of her. And she stopped waving her arms around and shouting in surprise, because everyone else had been shouting at her and standing over her. And there was I, kneeling on the floor, smiling at her. And she kind of gave me a little smile. So I said, oh, you've got a lovely smile. So she smiled a bit more. So once I knew she was responding to me, because I didn't know what had set her off, something had, I took her hand, because you don't touch someone until you're sure that they're on your side or you're on their side. And I said to her, thank you. Thank you so much. You've made my day. Well, she'd stopped performing, hadn't she? And she sat up as if she was the queen, And she sat on the settee as if, but I still to this day don't know what had set her off. But it just shows it's how you make people feel, isn't it?
Yes.
And everyone has worth and value. And if only people can understand that. Because if people, my 3 principles, always a reason. So there's a reason why she was behaving like she was. She was frightened, probably, upset in some way. I never knew what it was. But the feelings, so I enabled her to regain some feelings. that were appropriate, didn't I? That made her feel that she had value. And I thought, well, this is wonderful, but it's the same with anybody with dementia. You have to find them.
Yeah. What is some of the responses you've received from people that have read the book? Any that really had stood out to you?
Well, I've been very blessed. They've all been positive. I haven't heard anyone complain about anything. In fact, they say when I'm going to write the next, I'm not, But I'm anything that helps other people. And I'm just so, well, humbled really to know that it has been of such help to people. I'm just so grateful that it's helped people. And they say, oh, if only I'd known this when I was younger, and we know when my father was alive. And I say, I know how you feel, because if I'd known when my father had dementia what I know now, I would have treated him completely different.
Right.
So I had to deal with that guilt as well. But I didn't know. I did the best I could. And people do the best they can
With what they have.
with their relatives, yes. But once you know that there's so much more, there are different ways of handling these things. So that's another motivation for me to try and make sure people know and can do better. And I'm still learning, which is why I do my weekly blogs as to what I've learned next. Yeah.
Well, and I just want to touch, on the situation with your father, Jennifer. We had a well-known neurocognitive doctor on a few months ago, and he's a big proponent for Alzheimer's and dementia treatment, clinical practice, and research. And, this kind of, at least here in the States, I'm not sure about the UK. He said, going through our medical training in medical school, we were essentially taught that, somebody with, we'll call it dementia, somebody with senility, don't take your time to try to treat them because you can't cure them. So, move on to the patients you can help and treat and cure. And that has still kind of resonated throughout, I think, medical training. And I'm hoping, it's changing now just with more awareness and, the tremendous work that you're doing and others. But do you feel like when you went through medical training, was that how dementia, they probably called it senility also?
It's just appalling. Yes, it was. It was called senility.
Yeah.
It's appalling. But you see, that's how they treated other conditions at one stage, wasn't it?
They didn't have an answer for it, right?
Because they didn't have an answer. And the same with cancer at one stage, or TB, you just kind of died with it or whatever, or with, a stroke even. But, nowadays, you don't say to a patient, well, with cancer, I can't cure you. There's a lot of treatment that can help, but there are people who can be cured, if you like, go into remission, but there are people who can't. But the doctor doesn't say, can't do anything for you. There's always something you can do, isn't there?
Always something, yeah.
Always something. Well, it's the same with dementia.
Right.
Some people are enabled to improve a lot and others less so, because there are so many different kinds of dementia. But so what? There are many different kinds of cancer, aren't there?
Yeah.
But a good doctor would never say, you've got cancer, nothing I can do for you, bye, would they?
Right.
Never.
Yeah.
So why not with dementia?
And, I'm hoping too, we'll see, I know our friends in Australia, they're doing some really groundbreaking work as far as education goes for dementia, where they have, bachelor's and master's programs. I'm hoping to see that kind of spread to other universities and other countries, because, the same as you wouldn't go to your family doctor for cancer treatment, you shouldn't have to go to your family doctor for treatment of dementia. It needs to be a specialty in and of itself. And I know it's kind of a combination between, geriatric, psychiatry, social care,
Neurology.
neurology, thank you. But yet you don't have one team and that's kind of some of the work that this doctor is doing. They have specialized teams that's all they treat and work with are these issues with dementia. And I'm hoping to see changes, in our lifetime where, these people will be offered more support, more resources, and more help. Because again, if you're taking care of your father and he has dementia, there's not a lot that the medical community can really help you with at that point, other than prescriptions, but it'll be interesting to see where the medical community goes in the coming years with how they address and treat, families that have been diagnosed with dementia. And I think you play a big part in that with just the tremendous advocacy and work you're doing. And it's just such a joy to know you and to call you a friend. And, I just commend you for the remarkable attitude and outlook and just, strength of positivity that you bring to the forefront. And it's contagious.
Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
I'm not the only one that is positive about
No?
it. But as you know from today, I still muck up and make mistakes, don't I?
Sure. We all do. We all do.
Yeah.
One last question I want to ask you, Jennifer, before we say goodbye for this call, for this talk is, when you're doing your blog every week, how does Jennifer decide what to blog about? When during the week, when do you decide? Is there a day that you put, pen to paper?
Well, no, let you into a secret. When something happens, something fairly major that I've learned something from, I write a blog about it.
Okay.
And I might write 2 blogs in 1 week and no blog the next week. And I send them to my son and he sets them all up. So they're not actually written the week that they appear.
Oh, okay. All right. But so it's whenever a life event occurs or something
Yes.
you've discovered.
I write about it. It might have been 2 weeks beforehand, but it's recent, very, very recent.
Okay. Well, we're going to have a link to your website, to your book. And again, thank you so much for all you're doing and just being a tremendously remarkable person, Jennifer. I applaud you and just really admire all the work you're doing. And I'm glad to call you a friend.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. But of course, I always thank the Lord as well.
Amen. Absolutely. That's for sure. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today here at All Home Care Matters. All Home Care Matters is here to help families as they navigate these long-term care issues. We invite you to visit us at allhomecarematters.com, where there's a private, secure, fillable form where you can give us feedback, show ideas, or if you have questions. Every form is read and responded to. And remember, you can listen to the show on any of your favorite podcast streaming platforms or watch the show on our official YouTube channel. Just make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. We would also like to say thank you again to our friend, Dr. Jennifer Bute, for joining us today. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you next time here at All Home Care Matters.
Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to you joining us again on another episode of All Home Care Matters. To learn more about the show and to connect with us, visit us at allhomecarematters.com.